Good morning, and welcome to another edition of 15 Minutes of Flame. This is Robert Phoenix. How is everybody today? I have not officially marked myself safe in Austin due to the bombings on Facebook because many of you know, I'm no longer in Austin. I have moved out of Austin and now reside 75 miles west in the sleepy little town known as Fredericksburg. But apparently, they have theoretically found the bomber. Apparently, a bomb went off in North Austin. It's actually in a town north of Austin called Round Rock. And Round Rock is most notable for its relationship with Dell Computer. That's where Dell Computer is, and that's where a ton of Dell employees live. There are two communities that have really exploded due to the presence of Dell. One is Round Rock, and the other is Cedar Park. And they've become two of the fastest growing areas in the country very, very quickly. And Round Rock is also noted for the fact that the Republic Broadcast Network is there, which I was not aware of. And the Republic Broadcast Network is, how shall we say, a very, I wouldn't call it extreme because that's not my orientation. But it's definitely on the right side if you're into conspiratorial radio or if you're into alternative news. And a lot of it is actually quite good, to be quite honest. It's not everybody's cup of tea, but a lot of it is quite good, and a lot of the shows really get to the heart of these these matters. A lot of the shows in that network cut to the chase. It's not a lot of beating around the bush and Alex Jones bullshit, where it's Alex Jones has literally become a spin machine for the Trump administration. I can't even. I watch Alex just to keep up with the spin. I don't watch Alex for anything other than where is the spin headed, because he's gotten to the point now where if you actually go in the opposite direction of what Alex Jones is saying, you're probably getting a lot closer to the truth, if the truth is be told. Well, I just looked at the headline here: the Austin bombings. It's the Austin bombings. I've been up since 6:15. Apparently, I'm still not awake enough to do the show. So let's get into this a little bit. Let's get the latest headlines on this, and then I will do my best to give you my breakdown as to what I believe happened and is happening, and not just in Austin. So we're going to go straight to the headlines, and I'll read you. This is right off of CNN. So here we go. Austin bomber kills himself with explosive device. A suspect in a wave of bombing attacks in Austin killed himself inside his car with an explosive device early Wednesday as authorities closed in, police said. Since the bombings started on March 2nd, investigators frantically searched for clues, calling. Hold on a second here. Calling the attacks the work of a serial bomber who increasingly changed tactics. The bombings killed two people and left the Texas capital terrorized with fear for 19 days. These are the bullet points from CNN, the latest developments. In the past 36 hours, law enforcement received information directing them to a person of interest who ultimately became a suspect. Surveillance teams tracked the suspect's vehicle to a hotel in Round Rock, north of Austin. So this is not somebody who may have been a resident. They're in a hotel. As police waited on tactical units, the vehicle left the hotel. SWAT approached the vehicle, and the suspect detonated a bomb, killing himself and knocking back and injuring a SWAT member. A SWAT officer fired his weapon at the suspect. It's unclear whether the officer shot the suspect. The suspect is a 24-year-old white man, and authorities don't know whether he acted alone or what his motive was. He is responsible for all the incidents in Austin, Police Chief Brian Manley said. Now, how do they know that? How do they know that he is responsible for all of them? I mean, they got a clue. Somebody tipped them off. They went to a hotel where this guy was cooking up bombs. Doesn't even sound like he's a resident. How did they know that he is responsible for all the incidents? This is the culmination of 3 very long weeks in our community, Manley said. Manley. He's manly. He urged residents to be vigilant, saying they don't know where the bomber has been for the past 24 hours, and if he sent additional packages. The Austin bombing suspect is dead. Great job by law enforcement and all concerned. Who do you think said that? President tweet. Surprised there wasn't an exclamation mark after the dead part. This is the FedEx incident. This happened yesterday. In the most recent explosion before the suspect's death. So he's a suspect. He's a suspect. But now Brian Manley says that he's responsible for all the incidents. So how could it be a suspect and be responsible? You're a suspect until you are proven that you're the person that's responsible for committing a crime. At which point, you're no longer a suspect. This is what drives me crazy about news. And this is where I think people are literally going nuts. It's the small things. It's those small little details that my Virgoan mind focuses on. Okay, here we go. Those 2 packages are connected to 4 previous bombings that left 2 people dead. FedEx said the person who sent the package that exploded Tuesday also shipped a second one that was turned over to law enforcement officials. FedEx said it provided authorities with extensive evidence from its security system on the packages and the person who shipped them. In the incident near San Antonio, the device was detonated on an automatic conveyor, Police Chief Michael Hansen said. A female employee was treated on site and released. The FedEx facility was not the intended target. A possible explosion reported Tuesday night at a Goodwill store in Austin turned out to be unrelated. In that incident, an employee was injured by 2 artillery simulators in a donation box, said Eli Reyes, Austin's assistant police chief. The employee was treated and released from a hospital. Okay, this is getting very strange, and I'm going to link it up because I've been doing some research this morning. I'm going to link it up to another story that is going widely unreported coming out of guess where? Florida. The investigation, as investigators search for answers, they are checking the cameras at the facilities from Tuesday's incidents, the source said. Investigators believe the same person is behind all the devices. Well, they don't believe it. They just said that they know it. Adding that the devices have a lot of consistencies. They are similar in the way they are made and use the same items, including a mousetrap or a clothespin switch, according to the police. We made one to show everyone what it looks like, and we did it in an hour, the source said. The bomb maker may have taken longer to do it to avoid blowing themselves up, according to the source. The level of bomb making skill doesn't necessarily point to military experience, the source said. Okay. So they've got a tweet here about the 9800 block of Brody Lane. By the way, I've been to that Goodwill before. I know exactly where that Goodwill is. It's on the corner of Brody and Slaughter. Investigators said the package that was found intact Tuesday may yield some clues. Now we have the blueprint and possible DNA on the inside of the bomb. So teams are working to render it safe. And look for DNA, the source said. The outside of the package would have been touched by employees at the store where it was dropped off and by the bomb maker, the source said. The bomb maker may have been wearing gloves. Of the 4 previous explosions in Austin, the first 3 involved cardboard packages left in front yards or on porches. They weren't delivered by the USPS or services such as UPS or FedEx, police say. Those 3 explosions, one on March 2nd and 2 more on March 12th, killed or wounded 3 African Americans and 1 Hispanic person. They happened in East Austin areas with predominantly minority residents. Some residents expressed concerns that the attacks may have been racially motivated. Now, that's an area of Austin that has gone through regentrification. And there are a number of groups in that area that are angry over the fact that essentially, quote unquote, white money has come into East Austin and turned it into a very different kind of neighborhood. And Texas has pretty high property taxes. So when there is an infusion of capital in an area that is underdeveloped, what happens is that property taxes consequently go up. And places that are owned, and a lot of these houses in East Austin are generational. They're generational real estate. They're passed down from one member of the family to another. And some of these people have been living in the same house for three generations at least. 2 to 3 generations. 2 at least, perhaps 3. So as the property taxes rise, people have to essentially leave because they can no longer afford their property tax. The reason property taxes are high in Texas is because there's no state tax. So they have to generate revenue to run their governments and all the services from some place, and that's property tax. So there are a number of groups who have risen, who have formed in East Austin, who are on the radical side that are anti-gentrification. So I'm giving you kind of the lay of the land of East Austin. It is the kind of the last sort of quote unquote ethnic bastion, or the ethnic neighborhood where there was for a long period of time lower cost housing. That's changing. And so you have different groups coming in, some of which are not really all that thrilled about what's happening or taking place in the neighborhood. Just giving you the lay of the land. Okay, so the first, this is a profile on the victims. The first explosion killed 39-year-old Anthony Stefan House on March 2nd. The second blast on March 12th killed 17-year-old Draylon Mason. God, these names, Manley, House, Mason. The third blast happened hours later and critically injured a 75-year-old woman. That blast was not very far from the InfoWars headquarters. And I know that for a fact. That was in an area, and even Alex Jones let it slip that it was. First of all, he said the explosion didn't take. It's in an area called Montrose. What's the other street, other road? Anyway, he talked about how it was not far from the InfoWars warehouse, and then he let it slip later that it was not far from InfoWars Montopolis. I'm sorry, Montopolis, not Montrose, Montopolis. That's where the explosion took place. That was the second one. And then he let it slip during the broadcast that it wasn't far from InfoWars headquarters. He was alluding to the fact that, well, he basically was using the warehouse as a cover for actually where they do the broadcast. Okay, those three blasts all happened after someone left explosive-laden packages on the victim's doorsteps. In the fourth blast, the device was triggered by a tripwire, injuring two white men in a predominantly white area. Okay, so now we have a different profile. Police have not ruled out the possibility that those bombings could be hate crimes. They urge residents to pay attention to their surroundings and not approach or touch anything that looks suspicious, especially if it's on your plate and served at a dubious restaurant in the area. Don't touch it. All right, so let's break this down a little bit. Those three explosions killed or wounded 3 African Americans. Then we have the quote unquote white victims. The fourth blast, a device was triggered by a tripwire, injuring 2 white men in a predominant. So, can we really establish a pattern here? Found. This is from the Orlando Sentinel, March 16th, a mere 5 days ago. I'm going to read you this. Okay, you ready? Now, this is not, this is the same area, the Orlando Sentinel. Okay, the Orlando Sentinel. Same area that we have the Parkland shootings, although this did not take place in Orlando. Let me read this to you. A man found to have an arsenal at a home in Bartow, including, I guess Bartow's Florida, including C4 explosives, a fully automatic rifle, and several silencers, was arrested in Mississippi this week. According to Polk County Sheriff's Office, deputies were dispatched to 41-year-old Joel Riles' home on State Road 60 after a report that a package labeled C4 explosive had been seen on his property. That's convenient. C4 explosive. There it is. Detectives got a warrant to search the home. In addition to a 1.25-pound block of C4, the automatic rifle, and the silencers, investigators found various military equipment. Officials said in the statement, military radio gear and a U.S. Army compass, Quick Clot, which is used to stop serious bleeding, an electric light kit for landing zones, 14 explosives, including a ground burst simulator used to mimic battlefield conditions, and booby trap flares. 27 guns ranging from handguns to shotguns and AR-style rifles. Riles was arrested in Newtown, how about that? Where he was a volunteer training officer with the local sheriff's office. At the time of his arrest, he was conducting canine training, the sheriff's office said. Although Riles has a law enforcement and military background, he does not have the required certification to train law enforcement canines. I find that funny. Or a license to be in possession of military-grade explosives. Where can I get one of those licenses? Can I go to the DMV? Hey, I'd like to apply for the military-grade explosive license, please. According to the sheriff's office, Riles served in the U.S. Army and Florida National Guard, was a deputy in Hillsborough County from 2006 through 2013, among other military and police positions he held. Joel Riles has a checkered law enforcement past. However, there is absolutely no reason for him to have this equipment. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd said in a statement, the military-grade explosive materials to build bombs and tactical equipment found in his possession are extremely dangerous. Although he posed no immediate threat to our community, he certainly could have used them for the wrong reasons. That statement alone is completely insane. Completely insane. He posed no immediate threat to our community. Okay? Well, he's got all these explosives, according to the story. So it's interesting. Here, this is just days before what happened or what's been happening in Austin and the explosive incident which led to the death of this bomb builder. Here's a guy in Florida, which is he's loaded. He's loaded to the gills with military style equipment. And it sounds to me like this is not somebody who is like a prepper. This is not a prepper dude. This is not somebody who's got a few guns and 6 months worth of prep food, emergency food. Now, this is somebody who is doing deeper work. Let me just read off what he had here again. Military radio gear and a U.S. Army compass, quick clot, which is used to stop serious bleeding, an electric light kit for landing zones, 14 explosives, including a ground burst simulator used to mimic battlefield conditions and booby trap flares. Let's go back to what they found at the Goodwill in Austin. What did they find? Let me go back to the story. Da, 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 da. Let's see. Let me go back. Okay, this is what they found in Austin. A possible explosion reported Tuesday night at a Goodwill store in Austin turned out to be unrelated. In that incident, an employee was injured by 2 artillery simulators in a donation box. 2 artillery simulators in a donation box. Okay. What do we have here? 14 explosives, including ground burst simulator, used to mimic battlefield battle. It's basically the same explosive that was found in this guy's place in Florida, Polk County, Florida. It's basically the same device. So what's really going on here? What's really happening? Are we looking at just some kind of lone wingnut? Or are there people that are being employed and deployed in order to create havoc in our immediate world? I mean, don't you think I think it's interesting that this guy's been popped for having these simulators, and I'm not saying it's the exact same ones from his little simulator collection, but it's similar. It's similar. It's a similar simulator. Okay, all right. There are things going on here. If you do a Google search on bombings, you're going to find that there is more shit, okay, that has come up recently around quote unquote bombings. So my spidey sense says there's something going on here. And it's not just what passes for some kind of random boob who is setting tripwire bombs, which, by the way, even though the fine people at the Austin PD have clarified the fact that you don't need to be ex-military to create these bombs. Notice how they said that. They had to clarify that very quickly. You don't have to be military or ex-military. Anybody can put together a mousetrap bomb. When was the last time you decided just to put together a mousetrap bomb for the hell of it? Yeah, me neither. Okay. I also did a search for some other related material. And this is an interesting part of the story, or what I believe is an interesting part of the story. Back around 2010, 2011, I discovered a story about a guy who was living in Brooklyn. And he had shot himself in the leg in an apartment. He'd shot himself in the leg in an apartment. And of course, it's loud. The gunshot goes off. He's screaming. And the person running the building, runs in and sees this guy, on the ground on the floor of the apartment, bleeding. And he calls the cops. Cops show up. Ambulance shows up, and they find a huge weapons cache. Guns galore. Explosives. And what was really interesting is they found all this anti-Semitic material. And then the guy proceeds to tell them that, number one, he's Jewish, and number two, he is a resident of Israel. And essentially what he was doing is he was perpetrating hate crimes. But he was perpetrating hate crimes so that it would appear that it was either white nationalists or anybody else other than a person who is basically spreading hate crimes in his own community. This is what he was doing. Okay, this is what was happening. So he was clearly some kind of deep cover mole agent provocateur. And let me just tell you right now, these people exist everywhere. They're everywhere. And they may work for the IDF, they may work for the CIA, they may work for any number of organizations, tactical groups, whatever. They're out there. And their job, when they are tasked to do it, is to stir shit up. That is what they are there to do. They're there to foment tension, terror, hate, whatever it is that's needed. They're out there and they're deployed, and that's what they do. Sometimes they'll rope other people in and they'll create patsies, so that the patsy actually winds up doing the dirty deed. But in many cases, these people are in deep cover. So when I look at something like these recent spate of bombings in Austin, knowing that there are military, ex-military people working for deep state, deep cover, people working for international organizations, groups, agencies that have an agenda to fulfill, I think it's pretty clear that this is not your garden variety nutcase who just wants to me it is. Again, I'm working probably with a lot less quote unquote evidence that the so-called suspect has delivered to the Austin PD, who's no longer a suspect, but still is a suspect. I'm trying to put together pieces here that begin to make some kind of sense. I'm going to get to another story that I uncovered, which I think is quite interesting. And again, this gets back to the whole notion of an agent provocateur, or a person who is essentially perpetrating and committing a crime. Based on a different kind of identity, posing as one group or posing as a person who's affiliated with a group, and that is actually not the case at all whatsoever. So hey, let's look up the definition of agent provocateur. Let's do this. Here we go. So we're going to look at I'm going to read you the definition of agent provocateur. Okay. So this is there's a lingerie company called Agent Provocateur. That's a great name for a lingerie. So Agent Provocateur, it's French for inciting agent, is a person who commits or who acts to entice another person to commit an illegal or rash act or falsely implicate them in partaking in an illegal act. An agent provocateur may be acting out of their own sense of duty, or may be employed by the police or other entity to discredit or harm another group, such as a peaceful protest or demonstration, by provoking them to commit a crime, thereby undermining the protest or demonstration as a whole. Where have we seen this? Charlottesville? In accordance with French grammar, the plural form of the term is agence provocateuse. A female agent is an agent provocatrice. How about that? Let's see. To prevent infiltration by agent provocateurs, the organizers of large or controversial assemblies may deploy and coordinate demonstration marshals, also called stewards. So here's the common usage. An agent provocateur may be a police officer or a secret agent of police who encourages suspects to carry out a crime under conditions where evidence can be obtained. FBI does this all the time. Or who suggests the commission of a crime to another in hopes that they will go along with the suggestion and then be convicted of the crime. A political organization or government may use agents provocateurs against political opponents. The provocateurs try to incite the opponent to do counterproductive or ineffective acts to foster public disdain or provide a pretext for aggression against the opponent. Historically, labor spies hired to infiltrate, monitor, disrupt, or subvert union activities have used agent provocateur tactics. Agent provocateur activities raise ethical and legal issues. In common law jurisdictions, the legal concept of entrapment may apply if the main impetus for the crime was provocateur. So we have a whole series of groups connected to agent provocateurs. COINTELPRO being one of the more famous ones back in the 1970s with the infiltration of the Black Panther movement amongst other groups, including the Weather Underground. Let me read you another little piece here that I found. Oh, by the way, the story about the guy in the apartment in Brooklyn has been completely scrubbed from the internet. I can't even find it anymore. However, I did find something else. And this is, again, another instance of what I would believe is agent provocatorianism. And this took place a year ago. And it took place almost a year ago to the day. This is March 23rd, 2017. This is from CBC News. And again, I'm going to share with you information that may challenge you a little bit. But you have to understand that we're living in a world that is mostly a complete deception. And things aren't what they appear to be. Okay, here's the headline. Israeli Jewish man arrested for bomb threats against Canadian and U.S. Jewish targets. A 19-year-old Israeli Jewish man was arrested in Israel Thursday as the primary suspect in a string of bomb threats targeting Jewish community centers and other institutions in Canada and the U.S. Israeli police spokesman Mickey Rosenfeld described the suspect as a hacker, but said his motives were still unclear. Israeli media identified him as an American-Israeli dual citizen and said he had been found unfit for compulsory service in the Israeli military. He's the guy who is behind the JCC threats, Rosenfeld said, referring to dozens of anonymous threats phoned into Jewish community centers in North America, as well as Australia, New Zealand, and in Israel over the past 2 months. In Canada, the threats have been made recently to Jewish community centers in Vancouver, Calgary, Winnipeg, Toronto, and London, Ontario. The threats led to criticism of the White House for not speaking out fast enough. Last month, the White House denounced the threats and rejected anti-Semitic and hateful threats in the strongest terms. U.S. Attorney Jeff Sessions says the arrest shows the Justice Department will not tolerate religious-oriented attacks. So, again, what is going on here? What is going on here? Says the hacker phoned via computer network. Rosenfeld said the man from the south of Israel used advanced technologies to mask the origin of his calls and communications to synagogues, community buildings, and public venues. He said police searched his house Thursday morning, discovered antennas and satellite equipment. Where does a 19-year-old get that shit? Where? Question mark. You tell me. He didn't use regular phone lines. He used different computer systems so he couldn't be backtracked. Yaniv Azani, head of a technology in the Israeli police's cyber unit, says the man used several different means to camouflage the various layers of communication mechanisms to carry out the calls. Nimrod Vax, co-founder of the U.S.-Israeli cybersecurity firm Big ID. That's the guy's name. Nimrod Vax. I'm sorry, I'm left a little speechless over that. Said the phone calls required a certain level of sophistication, but were not too difficult for an experienced hacker. Yeah, it's one thing to be able to carry it out. It's another to get the equipment. This stuff is not cheap. In order to do the type of hacking that the unidentified, they never identified him, the unidentified hacker carried out, you need some money. You need some money to get this stuff. 19-year-olds don't always have a lot of money, do they? No. Just the way it goes. My take, likely working for some sort of intelligence agency. Can we say agent provocateur? Here's another little bit here from March 1st. Man arrested, accused of making explosive package intended for NYPD officer. How about that? Police arrested a man Wednesday in connection with an exploding package that killed a man in Queens last summer. A package that was intended for an NYPD officer, according to officials. Police said Victor Kingsley. Where do they get these names? Like the victorious king, Victor Kingsley, Nimrod Vax, Mason, House. I mean, I'm sorry. I know it's all just circumstantial, but the names are fascinating today. Was arrested at a Brooklyn home in East Flatbush near Church Avenue and East 43rd Street and was charged with using a weapon of mass destruction. So here we go. Here's another little bomb event. Guy arrested in New York, March 1st. How about that? We have the military guy. He was arrested. I mean, this stuff is fat. There's something going on here. Let me give you another little story, little tidbit. This was from November of last year. This is what goes on. This is when you're asleep, right? Literally, figuratively, this is what goes on. Suspected arms trafficker arrested in Crown Heights. Heavily armed agents from the BATF, along with law enforcement agencies, raided a house on Brooklyn Avenue in Crown Heights as part of an ongoing firearms trafficking investigation. Very interesting. Do a little background on Crown Heights. You'll find some interesting connections there. And what happens with these stories is, as many of it. So, okay, let me read this to you. Around 3:15 p.m., heavily armed agents with BATF, supported by the New York Sheriff and other law enforcement agencies, broke into a house on Brooklyn Avenue near Empire Boulevard and taking all the residents into custody. All the residents, just one, all the residents. ATF sources said that the raid was carried out by the ATF and NYPD Joint Firearms Task Force and that one of the subjects was taken into custody. He would be charged by the Brooklyn DA's office. The subject's name and the nature of the charges have not been released at this time. Witnesses said that all the residents of 430 Brooklyn Avenue were taken into custody. As many as a dozen unmarked vehicles flooded the area, and agents armed with rifles were seen running. As quickly as they all appeared, the scene quieted down. And this story was buried. Crown Heights is an extremely orthodox area in New York. Extremely orthodox. So what's going on here? What's happening? What's really happening? Here's my take. That there is some level of what we would call Operation Chaos that's in place. And we're seeing it across the board. You know, the event at the Parkland School, or the Marjory Stoneman School in Parkland, and these bombings are, I think, all connected to a much bigger operation, much bigger enterprise. And the whole idea here, between or in conjunction with all these events, is to create, number one, tension and fear. Running around, being tense, being fearful. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Ratchet it up. That's number one. To create a psychological and emotional disturbance in the field. Number two, what do people always want when things are unpredictable, chaotic, radical? Well, they want to be safe. They want to be secure. So, again, good old Hegelian dialectic, problem, reaction, solution. We got a problem here. What's the problem? The problem are bombs. Okay, well, we probably have to take care of that. Well, what are they doing? Well, they're going through the USPS. They're going through FedEx. They're going through UPS. Oh, gee, well, how can we stop that? Well, we can stop that by implementing biometric devices. Biometric devices. So when you go to the post office, when you go to UPS, when you go to FedEx, well, guess what? They'll just have a nice little retinal scan for every time you do a transaction. Want to mail a letter? Step right on up. Look right over there into that little red light. There you go. Okay, you're good. You're safe. Oh, sorry, you're not. There's a little flag next to you. Excuse me, can you go over there? Can you please just go over there and wait about a couple of minutes until the Postmaster General comes out and the Postmaster comes out and has a word or two with you? This is where it's going, okay? We're talking about a 24/7, 365 panoptical society where everybody is under some form of surveillance. This is exactly where this is the solution to the problem, which is chaos, reaction, make things safe, solution, make sure everybody is under some level or form of surveillance. We can't trust anyone. We cannot trust anyone. Therefore, we must enact systems of surveillance and security so that everybody can feel safe. Clearly, this is where it's headed. This is a big part of it, okay? Big part of it. By the way, a couple of the Parkland kids, the Marjory Stoneman kids, they're on tour. I posted this story on Facebook yesterday. One of the kids is in Israel talking about gun control. It is completely insane and ironic because she's there and she's talking about gun control. And she says, whenever I come to Israel, I feel so much safer. And then they've got pictures of people carrying rifles and sidearms everywhere. And it's like, the whole thing is bizarre. Here she is. She's going to Israel to talk about gun control in the United States. Meanwhile, everybody there joins the army, except for our 19-year-old hacker geek friend, who apparently circumnavigated that. Everybody joins the army. Everybody learns how to shoot a gun. And everybody carries guns. And yet, she's there for gun control. And another one of the students from Marjory Stoneman is in Dubai. Dubai, talking about what the hell are they doing in Dubai? The whole thing is just completely surreal. You have a kid from a high school, supposedly, who can't even vote yet. But it's not stopping their right to express themselves, obviously. And then going to Dubai, which is not a cheap. That is not a cheap trip. It is not a cheap trip. Somebody is paying for that, and then having a press conference or having some kind of meeting with people in Dubai who are influential and powerful, giving a high school kid a platform in order to talk about gun control in the United States. The world is completely insane around this. I mean, it's just like, I mean, we have entered into the land of the surreal, to be quite honest with you. This is totally surreal. And you just have to take one step back and look at it and go, this is nuts. This is totally nuts. And nobody actually ever questions anything. Well, maybe some people do. I'm sorry. I don't want to be dismissive. There are a lot of good people out there that are questioning how these events are unfolding. The challenge is that now we've entered into a realm of hyper censorship, where the modus operandi or the MO is to shut people down as quickly as possible for having a dissenting point of view or dissenting opinion. Anyway, I just wanted to, again, to bring to light what I think is going on behind these bombings, part of a larger action of chaos that's being implemented inside of mostly this country. I'm sure there are other parts of the world that are suffering from the same kinds of, by and large, really what it is, it's emotional, psychological, and spiritual extortion. That's what it is. Emotional, psychological, spiritual extortion. It is a gangland tactic. It's called protection, right? It's one of the oldest tactics on the planet. Create the threats and then offer to solve or insulate the people who are being threatened. But for a price, there's a price to pay. There's always a price to pay for security. And don't ever forget that. There's always a price to pay for freedom. It's a different kind of price, though. Very different kind of price. So, again, at the end of today's show, what we try to do is bring all the molecules back together. Oh, we got some chat action. What do we have here? Log history. Okay. Let's see. Do we have any chatty? No chatty today. So what we try to do at the end of the show is to bring all our molecules together and back in place and to cohere, to be coherent and clear. As the late great John Trudell was always fond of saying, coherence and clarity. Coherence and clarity. So what we did today is we disassembled the bombings to the best of our ability. Now, clearly, there's a lot of information here. We've only been on the air for about 45 minutes, actually 50 minutes. I did my best to give you an overview as to some other things that are going on currently, other events that are related. I also gave you a brief little initiation or introduction about the whole notion of the agent provocateur and how they have been deployed. I gave you an example of at least 2 agent provocateurs, and perhaps another that was snagged before they could actually do something. With this light of awareness, perhaps you can be a little less fearful. Perhaps you can see how events are manufactured inside this so-called reality to evoke certain responses and reactions from you and others. And with a little more knowledge, with a little more insight, with a little more information, I'm going to use a bomb term here, you can diffuse those explosive situations inside yourself. Very important. Very important. And of course, we also have to continue to feed ourselves the best that we can, whether it's the best food, the best water, the best air, the best relationships, the best love, the best prayer and meditation. These are the most important elements that we can continue to build into our lives, because there are certain things that are just beyond our control. We cannot control everything. And because that is part of the grand illusion. But what we can control are the influences that we bring into our lives. And that's the most critical factor, I believe, that we can really connect with and hold on to and integrate into our lives. So I'll take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. It'll be interesting to see what happens and what more we find out about the so-called bomber in Austin, Texas. All right, that's a wrap. I'll be back 24 hours from today. And you know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real and your heart to stand for what's possible. I'm Robert.